I'm here too because you can't say no to Judy. We go back a long ways from the start of the county government, and it's been a travel. I guess it's been well worth it. And she asked if I would, again, for the second year in a row, look at the county budget and see where I see some issues. My first, gotta get this full screen.
Yeah. Until Chimney DC.
So,
This thing.
okay.
Doesn't it? But my.
So this is not working. Let's go on. Well, let's see if I can move it here. My first attempt was to review the budget. I took and looked at what the budget showed. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of figures, and they're small on the screen. But the total county budget was like $139 million budget in the general fund. So my approach was I was going to try to look at it and see where are the costs going up? Where's the problems with this budget? Why are people, having problems dealing with this? So what I did was I broke it down between what's labor, material, and labor costs and their fringe benefits. When you look at the budget at this point is somewhere around 62% of the budget is personnel costs. So your issue is always going to be if you add people and the only really source of income that you have in the county government is real estate taxes. So when you add in additional people, when you increase wages, you're increasing your total budget. That total budget is almost completely funded by real estate taxes. So when you go ahead and give raises and you add people, you're going to have to increase real estate taxes. That has not been done the last couple of years the way it should have been. They've used the fund balance to get by, which is not a good way to do it. My first attempt then was I looked at it and I tried to tie in the budget to the summary that they have on the page, which they base their real estate taxes on. There was errors. There was 5 different departments that the figures that were on the detail didn't agree with the summary that's ahead. This accounted for $697,000 putting that budget out of balance right off the bat. Bang. So that's a big issue you got to deal with. Then working with it, it's still a little bit more. I found out that not only was there that problem, there was a problem that there was a double counting of a transfer from gaming fund. $2,141,976. So now the budget is not only out to $697, it's out to $2,191,000. How you can double count a revenue, I will never know. And the issue when I look at that, the problem was they manually put those figures in there in the 2 positions. That was an adjustment made by the administration. So why they didn't say, well, we can't do that, it doesn't make sense. And then there's other issues throughout. I mean, there's like the planning fund, they had $100,000 transfer in from the gaming fund. Well, there's no transfer out of the gaming fund to the planning fund, so that was overstating of the revenue in the planning fund. There was an issue, this is a plus issue on the planning department. They had the transfer from the general fund at one figure and the money that was coming from the general fund was $25,000 higher. So in essence, that was a plus of $25,000 that we got to work with. That's the only plus that we are dealing with in this budget. And if you have questions, feel free to ask them as we're going along, because, you know, we'll get along to the different issues and it'll be a problem. But also then when I looked at, one of the very basic things that I do when I did the budget was make sure that the transfers from the general fund that went to the other budgets were correct, were the same amounts. Well, there was an error in the public safety. It's off $101,000 short. So now that's another deficit that the county council in their deliberations are going to have to address. How do we fix that? Well, you're going to fix it by either raising real estate taxes or by using more of the fund balance, which is a terrible thing. Then the Pleasant Ridge Manor. I looked at transfer from the Pleasant Ridge Manor. The Pleasant Ridge Manor transfer on the general fund was $500,000. I go to their budget, and it shows it was going to be $899,000. Bingo, we're now another $399,000 out of balance. So it continued on. You know, when I look at some of the figures that are in this budget and try to look at like I checked the figures that were in 2023 to what was on the audit report. They're completely different. They're not the same. I don't know why they're different in the figure, but the figures should be the same. And not having that information to prepare a budget, I think, is just poor work for the county council, because now they don't know what figures they're dealing with. I've been told that the figure that they show on the budget for actual at August 31st is actually the figures as June 30th. Well, okay, so I use, you know, when I was working on the budget, I always use those prior years period and what's been spent in the current year to kind of gauge as to where the expenses were going with this year. Well, if I'm looking at August 31st and the figures are June 30th, my computations are going to be way off. So, you know, again, just poorly done. You know, part of what fund balance, use of the fund balance. The use of the fund balance for 2023 per the budget is like $5 million. But the budget figures that's in here is $9 million. How do you make that big of a difference? So I have no confidence in the information that's been presented. I just, you know, we never had that in the 40 years that I was the financial advisor of the county council. We always had solid information could we deal with. We were always able to get information from the administration that we could make some pretty good decision. I don't know where the county council is on this issue, but they've got to be in big trouble because they don't know what they're dealing with. They don't have any idea what figures are correct. So when you look at, let's see if I can. When you look at the budget, you've got wages are a real problem. I got them. These are the issues that I've really just talked about recently when we're going at. They projected $3.8 million. With all the issues that I've identified, that figure is now up almost close to $8 million. Well, that's a major difference. What can you do? You know, what do you do? What's this county council going to do? Do they have to raise taxes and then they be the people that the community is upset with? If they're doing the correct job, that's what it is. The increase in wages and fringes from 2020 to 2025 in the budget is $16 million. and there's only been one tax increase at the time. Out of your $139 million of budget, over $80 million of that is provided by real estate taxes. All the other revenue are not revenue that increase. So the only thing that you can increase to balance the budget when your expenses are up is you either increase real estate taxes or you cut expenses. It's pretty simple how you deal with the budget. It's it's not taking a science. So one of the things that I looked at too was how many positions were added. I'm having. No, this. So I looked at what positions were in the budget in 2020 compared to what was in 2025. Now, you can see that 2020 there were 693 positions. This is just in the general fund. It doesn't include the other funds. Right now in the 2025, there's 731 positions in there. And they have eliminated a total of 11 positions in the 2025 budget. So in the 2024 budget, we're talking positions added of 35, 40 people. Well, when you start talking about adding people, you're talking about adding dollars to your budget. If the positions are, if it's a $30,000 position, the actual cost is going to be somewhere around 50. Just simple, not scientific. But you start adding those positions, you start adding dollars to this budget. You look at your other costs, your materials and supplies, and some of the professional fees that you pay. Those costs all go up during year two. So again, if you look at it, and I looked at it very quickly, I said, if the $139 million goes up 2%, you're talking about almost $2 million that'll be added to the budget for next year. Now, 2% is a low figure because wages and fringes or wages go up 3%. So it's going to be higher than that. So the hole that you build for next year gets bigger. And you have to deal with that at some point. The logic for eliminating some of these positions, too, just blows my mind. The only logic they had for eliminating those positions the positions were vacant at the time they prepared the budget. Well, that's not what you do. You have to know why you're eliminating. And I know there's 2 positions in the courts for court reporters that they eliminated because they were vacant. The court knows they need those positions. They need them to operate the courts. So the court's just going to issue an order saying, put those positions back in. So that to me, that's a false cut. That doesn't matter for anything. It's just waste of time. Same way with some of these other positions. They eliminated 3 positions in the council office. Well, first of all, 2 of those positions are in the, I forget what it's called, with a community area that he just eliminated because he didn't feel they needed them anymore. Well, county council is the one that operates that area, and they've felt that's important for the Erie community. It's been in the budget for probably 30 years, but just to eliminate it, just to cut it without having county council involved in that decision. When you do those kind of things, you need to sit down with the people that manage the budget. Say, can we eliminate these? What happens? What can we reduce those figures down? I know there was a lot of positions eliminated in the library. I will be concerned about that because the library is important. Library is probably the only one thing in the county budget, or most of the biggest thing in the county budget that the average citizens of Erie County use. You know, most of the other thing, you got criminal justice, you've got, you know, children's services and all those things. You know, most of us don't get affected by those. I mean, it's important for our community to have those things, but it's not something, a benefit that we necessarily get out of the budget.
What is the line item for the library?
It's the transfers to the library. I didn't go into the individual fund. I just didn't have time to do that. But you'll see that the transfer to the library is $6,241,000.
Just to, if I could say, the cuts to the library happened before, you know, we got to this point. They did a reorganization by boards that had a number of positions.
Yeah.
So again, you look at where were positions added. There was a lot of positions added in the courts. Now I know a number of them were the attorneys they hired to handle cases. Again, I don't have any control over that. The court's saying that, but when you agree to that, when county council agrees to adding those positions in the budget, they have to realize that it's going to cost money and that you're going to either pay for it by cutting other expenses, or you're going to pay for it by increasing real estate taxes. Simple. Decisions made by the county council and the administration during the year results in this problem at the end of the year.
Go ahead. Joe, I don't know if we're going to get to this later, but one of the things that highlighted was the use of, in the position of the ARP purpose. Especially, supposedly there was about $10 million not spent. There's maybe $5 million that was allocated but not signed off on, and there's another $5 million, and some of these funds are going to expire, if not all, by the end of the year, if not spent, if not allocated and spent. Do you have any comment on where those funds sit? Do they sit within the general budget, or how are they handled?
Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go through all this and then look at all these funds. I kind of try to concentrate on just the general fund. I did not look at those funds. I did not, you know, on the other budgets. I mean, there's a lot of money being spent in the other budgets that I didn't have time to go through and look and find that. So based on my sample size in the general fund, there's got to be problems in the other funds.
Right.
You know, you just don't make that many mistakes without making mistakes in the other fund.
I'm confused as when people talk about the fund balance and the gaming, everybody. Could you be describe a little more what that's?
I have some more information on the fund balance I'll get into. Fund balance is very important to me because more than 40 years working there, building up that fund balance took a lot of effort. Took a lot of, you know, mashing of teeth by both the administration and county council to get it up to that point. The fund balance is so important. It's when people from outside look at your budget and find out that you're spending more than you're taking in, they say you're mismanaging. No questions. I have sat in on bond counsel, with bond counsel trying to find out what the bond ratings are going to be. That's one of the first things they'll look at. Are you spending more money than you're bringing in? Do you have a sufficient fund balance in there? When we were in the time that I was there, the policy was set up that if you use the fund balance in one budget, you reimburse it the next year with additional taxes. It's not being followed. It's being ignored completely. Okay. So you can tell, you know, you look at these positions and you can tell that majority of positions are in corrections. Now, they didn't increase too many positions in corrections. They went up 2, but we're dealing with it. We have to deal with that. It's not something we want, but maybe you take time to go in and understand what's going on and see if there's ways to keep those costs down, whatever it is. I'm not sure that's being done. I just don't have that. Courts are the next biggest people, and that's, again, county council and administration have very little control over that. The courts are going to say, we're an equal branch of the government. This is what we need. Pay for it. Okay? Now, the next slide is what I try to do is compare 2025 with what was in the 2020 actual to see where the big increases are. The biggest increases are really in corrections. The budget went from 13 million up to 23 million. Okay, why? I know that last year there was a fairly decent increase in their wages in the correction office. Again, as administration, as county council recommend those increases, they have to say we either cut expenses or we increase real estate taxes to cover it. Using the fund balance is just not right. The next biggest increase is down in children's services, where the transfer to children's services went from 9.4 million up to 14.3 million. Again, I know that there was issues in children and youth before with overtime. I know that a committee was set up with administration, county council, and from children and youth to look at it to see if there's a ways to reduce that. I don't know if that's being done now or if it's just going wild. So, you have to go in and you have to dig down on those budgets to find out why are they going up those percentages. You have a big increase in the courts again, $3 million. You got a big increase in operation and administrations of $2 billion over that period. Again, digging down and going in and finding out why the increases. What percentage, the big percentages are in those areas. Obviously, it takes a lot more time than I had available to go through there and find out why. But I would take and look at each line item, compare it, and say, all right, why is that going up? Maybe the costs are going up because hospitalization expense is going up, because, workers' comp expense is going up. Well, can you control those? Yeah, you might be able to control some of those. You might look at ways to reduce the hospitalization costs or the drug cost. I don't know, you look at it.
Just a comment, the Human Resources Code and pay scale, they have the wherewithal now in the administration to increase someone's salary by 18%. With no extra permission from us. Yes, they have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they have the wherewithal to make an 18% adjustment up on pay in the county just through the administration. And some positions may deserve that, but there's very little accountability there. And when you look at 62% of a budget that is salaries, 18% is a whole lot of money. And there are a lot of backdoor raises, I will say that.
Okay. So again, you would see where the expenses are going. Some of them are not controllable, but if they're not controllable, you're stuck with increasing real estate taxes to cover them. There was a large increase last year when they raised the taxes, and they fought that, but it was necessary, and they still used they're projecting to use $6 million of the fund balance in 2024. That's just not sustainable. You know, it's going to cause problems. This is the fund balance. This is what's happening. The plus figures are when they decrease fund balance. And now, again, I don't know which is correct on the fund balance, and because when I look at different figures, they're different amounts. But 2015 through 2020 and 2021 were mostly an increase. Oops, I didn't do that. Were an increase. And if you look at the bar chart over there, it's the last 4 years that the fund balance has been used. So this budget is using funds that were generated by previous administrations to fund their spending. You can't do that. You know, it's just going to be a problem. I looked at what errors I found in the 2025 budget, and I'm actually saying that the fund balance they're going to use in 2025, based on all these errors, is going to be $7.8 million. Well, your fund balance is just going to disappear. And all the effort that went into all these years to make sure that fund balance green is gone. You're going to be operating where you're not going to be able to pay your bills. You go out for a bond rating, they're going to jack your rate up because you're spending more than you're bringing in. You don't have enough fund balance to properly operate the county. I then went and said, all right, so next year, that $7.8 million is not there for 2026. If you have just a 2% increase, which would be almost $3 million, you're now over $10 million in hole to start off for 2026. Well, okay, that's almost $1 million of tax that you're going to have to raise to balance that. You've wiped out pretty much the fund balance. Some people are not going to be very happy about that. You know, I was a financial advisor for 40 years. There was a lot of working back and forth. There was always disagreements between the administration and county council. But, you know, the bottom line was always they did what was best for the county. We were a solid financial operation. You know, you look back at Sue Ellen Pasquale and Tracy Figala. Those people took real pride in the information they got. They attacked the budget and made sure that the underlying people knew what was in their budget and made sure that they spent within that budget. I don't see that happening now. We're going to pay for this. We're going to pay for this long term. You know, my requirement is that the tone at the top is so very important when you're operating a county and setting the budget up. You want to make sure that they know that you expect to follow that budget. And hello? Yes, sorry. And that they're responsible for the budget, and that you're going to be honest with them when you talk to them about the budget. They're going to want your feedback on your budget, so that you put the budget together that's positive, that's good. Failure to have that tone at the top just blows away the whole management of your budget. You've got to work with the people, and you've got to make reductions when you're making reductions that make sense. Now, I don't know about the reductions in the library, but maybe that made sense. I sat down with the people from the library and said, you can do this without this position. Whether there was feedback from those people, I don't know. I'm not involved with it, so I don't know. But those are things you can do. You go back and you look and you work with those people and you try to see which way is the best to manage. It's when I was on the school board, it was always, oh, we can just cut. You just cut. Well, you just can't cut. You've got to have logic for what you're doing with any budget. You've got to work with it, and because you're just throwing things down the road, and it's going to be a problem later on. Again, I would be kind of embarrassed to say that I was part of this budget, the preparation of this budget. The sample that I have from just the general fund was major errors. I don't know if that's going to relate to what's in the other funds. I just didn't have the time to go through all those to figure out where they're coming from on those. The only thing I checked in those other budgets is whether the transfers from the general fund equals the receipt of income in those budgets. I find errors in nothing. It's just amazing what the issue is. We've got some major problems coming up if this budget isn't addressed and wound down. Mike?
Hi, Margaret Watts. I live in Edinburgh. I would agree with you about the courts asking for money. I recall last year, just a week before the budget had to be passed, the courts required $800,000. And I'd already followed the budget and knew that they were not going to be able to make it. $800,000 a week before the budget, and they had to do it. And I am not certain about where all the public defenders' money, but that's something that's coming from the state, and they have to fund their public defenders. And we had trouble in Erie County with not having enough public defenders defending the people that need to be defended, and there's a whole other story to that. But I was worried back then, and a year later, and you're saying now, and I don't know if you could repeat this for me, but you said approximately, to your estimation, which you don't always know perfectly, but 7.8 million not there for 2026. And then when you look at 2027, we've wiped out that balance fund.
It's 2025 is 7.8.
Okay.
2026 will be over $10 million.
Okay. And then the millage, how do you equate that millage then?
Well, the millage generates somewhere around $13 to $14 million per mill. I'm going back on my history.
Right, I know it's estimations. It's
they're not really providing us with the information you need. If I went to the administration and said, "What's this reassessed value?" I bet you they wouldn't give it to me. I tried to find it on the website, couldn't find it, because then I could compute what a millage would generate. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm on.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I'm Mary Rennie. Most of you I know here, and many of you know that I stepped down out of sheer frustration, much of it having to do with a budget and fighting for things that I knew were in the interests of taxpayers, no matter what they wanted in the way of services, but in terms of their financial interests. And I guess, I'm looking at this and knowing that there is money coming from the gaming fund in order to fund a proposed EMS system that would be county operated. And the gaming revenue is already committed in large part for the community college, which is a legal obligation that we have. No matter how you feel about the community college, it's our obligation. So there's the concern about taking too much from the gaming revenue, and I know you're probably not going to get into that sort of thing. But the concern on top of that I've got personally is knowing what kind of money is spent on county-operated EMS systems in the U.S., which EMS is a problem. I will grant you that. It is a vital service. It is a problem. I don't think this county government is equipped to organize anything in the way of an EMS service, and then that's possibly millions more that's going to be hitting us in this budget in the not too distant future if they get their way in setting up this EMS authority that has no plan behind it. So, long way around to my question. Do you see a solution for this that the people can do? I mean, I've been fighting this all the way down the line. Some of it I have taken to higher authorities. It hasn't panned out. You don't seem to be able to hold these people accountable, elected officials, for decimating a legacy that was left to them by previous county councils and county executives.
Your vote is all that you can use to counteract this and require that the people that you elect are going to take it serious with what you prepare a document.
They're not going to be able to fill out of a CAFR that's going to stand up this next time, right?
I don't know that. I mean, they won't probably get approved because they've eaten up so much of the fund balance.
To CAFR.
So
Annual report.
yes, it's a.
David.
I've been out of accounting for a couple of years, being retired. Liz has questions, so please, before she jumps out of her seat.
I kept raising my hand. I wanted to say I'm not an accountant. I just played one in the newsroom and a little bit on city council. But I do have a kind of a follow-up to Mary's question, and I want to let people know that the person who's in charge of finances now for the county used to work for the city. The city had a $1 million error in, I believe it was the sewer fund, and I asked how it happened, and he said, human error. And I said, well, are there going to be consequences? And he said, well, if you think I'm going to fire somebody, no. I want to know about the consequences of manually adding numbers to a budget. How did that happen? Well, when you're working with Excel, you can't put something in here and not have it show up elsewhere. I guess this is more, I'm not asking you, I'm saying that somebody needs to be held accountable, not only for the mistakes, but for people exiting because of what's going on there. Somebody needs to be held accountable. It's not just the county executive, it's the team there. And I mean, of course, I guess it's still under my skin when he said that. Well, if you think I'm going to fire somebody, no. So now, if you are a layperson and you're elected as a legislator, it's very hard. I'm glad that the county had somebody to help county council all those years. The city council does not have that kind of expertise. And if I asked that we should do it, never happens. So anyhow, this makes me nervous about going back and looking at the city budget for years to see where those mistakes occurred also, because this is now a pattern. So anyhow, that's my soapbox. And what I did also want to know, what is the timeline for, when does council have to adopt the budget?
December 1st.
Okay. Yeah, so it's earlier than the city, which has...
They're approving it supposedly tomorrow.
Oh, my God. Okay.
And I don't know. I know that their administration's asked for $500,000 additional expenses to be added to the budget.
She's not a gent.
That's a big.
I don't know if this is a question to you or what. Last night, after the hearings, I just caught a tiny blip of what Erie News Now was saying, and they started out by saying the county executive is trying to get his EMS funded, and then they kind of went to the hearing, and it's like that's what they cared about. And I'm wondering, I live in the city and I pay taxes or fees for stormwater, for all kinds of things. Shouldn't there be a fee for EMS service in the county? But people wanted $100 and something thousand for a ball field. Just for the heck of it, I was checking. There was a wonderful grant program that the state had. Unfortunately, the deadline was April to apply for it, but that would have been a great place. And there's all these people with their hands out, sewer this, bridge that. The bridge money comes from the MPO. What is it doing coming to council? Why are these things not getting funding from the places they're supposed to get funding? And one last thing, I've been told that there's unspent money in the EMS fund, and there's unspent money in the, what's it called, municipal, what is it, Mary?
Municipal gap.
That the municipal gap, that there was money put in there, but it was never spent, but yet people are asking for new money, and I know you didn't address that, but I'm just throwing it out there.
It's not even so much what things are being spent on, Joe, because you agree to disagree on what those end up being.
I was saying it's not even so much what things are being spent on. That's the political end of things, right? That's what we fight about and arm wrestle over, and you come to a conclusion, which is the vote of county council, basically, and the cooperation or the uncooperation, as it happens, of the administration. But no matter what things get spent on, the how and the bottom line is always going to be what affects us most. We're like the shareholders of a business. We are part of a corporation, and if the corporation isn't going to hold together because the basics aren't sustainable, then it doesn't matter what services you get or what you have to show for the money. We're all losing.
The other thing, when we're talking about the gaming fund, they used $4.4 million of the gaming fund balance to put into these, I consider, walk-around money. I look at the EMS. I pay for EMS in Mill Creek. Does that mean I'm going to pay for it twice? To cover out in the county?
I just want to defend the county a little bit for the municipalities. I know in the West County, they have an intergovernmental agreement, and all of the municipalities in the West County, Girard Township, Girard Borough, Springfield Township, Elk Creek Township, they all adopted a special EMS tax, and their first-class township code, second-class township code, borough code provides that a municipality is responsible for EMS, and they have all passed ordinances, and they are taxing their folks for that, and they are paying for that. So I don't know why Brent Davis is asking to take all this over, because they're doing it and it's working.
Yeah, it's a power play.
It's a power play.
So sorry to take a step back, but I'm very concerned about the numbers not matching revenue and expenses. Shouldn't there be standards of accounting that are used to prepare this budget? And this smacks of malfeasance to me. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
This is accounting 101. This is basic accounting. You make sure things flow forward and back, and that's what you're transferring from the general fund to another fund. Agreed. I mean, that's basic. Never had an issue with that before. That's basic accounting. I just don't understand. There's nothing I can say I can support why it happened.
So clearly, I mean, it's more than just embarrassing. You're 100% right. I mean, putting this out in an accounting paper to a college professor would be, it's an F.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's beyond embarrassing. This is inappropriate. This is not, to your point. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. But this is not doing their job to the nth degree.
I agree.
Would you? That's your professional opinion.
I would agree. Yes. There's, as far as I can tell when talking to council people, there's no cooperation between the administration and council. I understand they won't let their department heads talk to county council? Well, okay, we're all in this together. We need this county. We need to provide these services. We should be working together to do that. To just button down and not let anybody know what's going on is
This administration one, or is that?
that's new because
Sorry.
I mean
I know years ago that wasn't the case,
yes.
but it's not just this most recent administration, or it is this most recent administration. And how in the world can the council vote for this budget? I mean, there would be no way.
I don't know where they're at and what they're thinking.
They're not here?
Huh?
Anybody from
They had a
council?
meeting. They had a meeting today.
Are you advising them at all?
I just talked to Rock Copeland and told him what I found. You know, because
You don't. Let's all of a what you said.
wait a minute. There's a question from back here. Then
I'm not sure if you can speak to this. Maybe Mary Lou Rennie can. Is there a mechanism? Can council put forth the argument that they never received a budget, that the budget wasn't timely because basic accounting principles weren't applied, so the December 1st deadline doesn't apply? I would say that you could argue the administration didn't ever give council a budget.
well, council can't ignore the December 1st day, even if the administration ignored it and didn't provide a balanced budget. Council's job is to get it passed by December 1st, and they have to do it. And, you know, the majority of council, I think, are want to do that. So I think it'll happen. It just may not be the best.
Council,
You know, with all due respect, because I think there are a lot of council members who really do try. Oh, all right, I'm not going to comment on individuals, but it is a completely dysfunctional situation right now with county council. You have at least a few members of county council who have one source of information, and that is Brenton Davis. And you have seen what the information is worth. And, you know, I was willing to work with him when he came in, but you need to have a stable government. And that's one thing I learned. You know, I was a department head under Mrs. Lynch, and you'll always be Mrs. Lynch to me, boss. But, you know, and you don't agree when you're a county employee or whether you're a county department head. You don't always agree with county council. You don't always agree with your boss, but you know that they're trying to do the right thing. I don't think there's a lot of faith that anyone's trying to do the right thing right now. So the people who are listening to one source of information are doing a tremendous disservice to the people of this county in the end. So.
Question.
I'm concerned about the EMS just because it's the sexiest thing. It's what everybody talked about at the hearing yesterday. It's what Erie News Now talked about. So there were like 10 people, you know, Corey, all kinds of people from townships saying, we want this money, we need this money. Are you saying that they have the ability to levy themselves, but they want us to pay for it?
Selling.
Right, but we're already paying for ours.
We have a question over here.
Hi, I'm thinking about somebody who's put together budgets and tried to meet deadlines, and I'm just wondering, isn't there some way that if county council is the final word, whether they can just cut some of the costs that are in there that are, you know, incorrect, just line item them out and take out Brenton Davis's costs too, or any of the administrative people that they think are doing the wrong thing, to your point. And, you know, return it to and vote on that. I mean, how many votes do they need to pass it?
5.
5.
So if they need 5, they've got 5 votes if they want to do it that way. and then they've given him, and he's got it back in his lap.
County council right now has all the power as far as this budget goes. They're the only one that can appropriate money. Administration cannot appropriate money. They cannot spend money. Somebody told me that he was going around spending some interest that came in from some of the funds. Well, he doesn't have that ability to appropriate money. The appropriation function is only with county council. So that's where they're at. This budget is their only time where they can control expenses, when they can work through it. You know, once it's passed and it goes over to the administration has to work with it. County can't come back and say, I want to cut that bureau now. That doesn't happen. It only happens when this period from September through December 1st. So, you know, it's in their bailiwick, but I'm not sure that they have the resources to go in and make sure that everything is correct. You know, it was always, all the time that I was involved with it, there was always confidence in the information that we received from the other side. May not be what we wanted to be, but at least it was accurate.
Hey, Joe, I wanted to thank you for illuminating information about what we may know, or you, through expert eyes, may find. But I understand just this morning, or very recently, there were action sheets that were approved, about 80 of them. And these are things that the public doesn't know about yet. Those are changes that are suggested to the budget.
They have done.
And they're going to vote on them, but can you comment regarding anything at all? Do you know anything at all about it?
I do not know what the county council has proposed, or the action sheets they've proposed. The only thing I knew is that I was told that $500,000 was requested by the administration to be added back to the budget. And I don't know where that is and what categories that's in. Any other questions? Thank you for your participation. It's important to get this information out, to people know that, and talk to your neighbors, let them know what's going on. We've got to try to make somebody accountable for this, and that we work with it.
Thank you.